Hello and welcome to Ashbourne on the southern edge of the Peak District in the Derbyshire Dales. Today we're going to form a 32-mile loop using the Tissington Trail and the Manifold Trail, and there's some absolutely stunning scenery along the way. So stick around because this ride is an absolute cracker. We're starting the ride from Mapleton Lane car park, just on the northern edge of Ashbourne. However, with this being a loop, you're able to start from wherever you want to, and there are a few other car parks around the route, which I'll point out as we go. To start the ride, we head north up the Tissington Trail, past the toilets and cafe and the bike hire. Although please be aware in winter, a lot of these facilities are generally closed. Sadly, this route doesn't go through the Ashbourne tunnel, but when I finished the loop, I couldn't help myself but ride through the tunnel. So if you hang on till the end of the video, I can show you the tunnel and another potential starting spot which would allow you to use the tunnel for this ride. After riding for just a couple of 100 metres up the trail, we come across a gate where the trail dips down and crosses over Bentley Brook, and cyclists are asked to dismount. Now the Tissington Trail is an old railway line, so you might be surprised to find, as I was, that there is a steep gradient here. And although there is a bridge at the bottom that crosses over the brook, this is obviously not a disused railway bridge, and trains would never be able to make the gradients either side. So after looking into this, I wasn't surprised to find that there did used to be a large viaduct here. It was built in 1899, and from 1971 it was used for recreational purposes as part of the Tissington Trail. In 1980 it was noticed that some maintenance was needed. Initially the Peak Park Planning Board wanted to demolish the viaduct, but due to strong local opposition they caved in and decided the maintenance would be carried out on the viaduct. Then suspiciously in 1980, during the maintenance, the viaduct collapsed, injuring a crane driver. The viaduct was replaced with the low-level pedestrian bridge that we have there today, and this remains the only steep stretch of gradient on the whole Tissington Trail. However, although there's no steep gradients on the Tissington Trail from here on out, there is a consistent gradient as we make our way the first 9 miles up the Tissington Trail, and it does feel like a bit of a slog. But, like all disused rail lines, the gradient is never too much, and there's always a little bit of railway infrastructure to admire along the way, including this old signal box near Callow Top. I'm assuming it was a signal box, but if you know different, please do let me know in the comments. The Tissington Trail is the former London and North Western Railway that ran between Ashbourne and Buxton. It was the last railway in what we know now as the Peak District to be constructed, and it didn't gain its Act of Parliament authorising construction until August 1890, with building work starting in 1895. The line was completed in 1899 and opened on the 4th of August. It allowed trains to run from Uttoxeter through Ashbourne to Buxton. From Uttoxeter, trains would use a branch line of the North Staffordshire Railway to make their way into Ashbourne. They would stop at the newly built station in Ashbourne, which is now where the Leisure Centre car park is, before continuing their way through the Peak District and joining the High Peak Railway at Paisley Hay, before completing their journey into Buxton. 2 miles up the Tissington Trail, we come across the first station between Ashbourne and Buxton. This is Thorpe Cloud Station, which takes its name from the nearby hill, Thorpe Cloud, which is at the entrance to the beautiful Dovedale Valley. The station was opened when the line opened in 1899, but was closed to regular traffic in 1954, although freight traffic and ad hoc excursion traffic continued all the way till 1963, before the track was lifted in 1964. There's no station buildings that remain here, but there is a car park and some picnic benches, so it is another possible start point for this ride. From Thorpe, the railway heads into the Fenny Bentley cutting, which was all excavated by hand by navvies in the 1890s. From here we head over the top of the A515, the modern way of getting between Ashbourne and Buxton. Although there is a bridge here to take us across the main road, the 7.5 tonne weight limit leads me to believe that this is not the original bridge. Although fortunately, having lost a little bit of weight recently, I'm not worried about being over this weight limit. The bridge here dates from 2005, when the original structure was replaced with this bowstring steel deck bridge. As you can see, the stone abutments are original and were reused for the new bridge. The new bridge improved the height restriction under this bridge, allowing local quarry traffic to pass under safely. And this quarry traffic used to use this line, and it was one of the main income sources for the railway line in this area. As it's very sparsely populated, passenger numbers were never that high around here, so it was the quarry traffic from the limestone quarries and other minerals in the area that kept the line operating. Around 4 miles in, we steam into Tissington Station, the station that gives this trail its name, and on the left hand side you can see that the platform is still intact. However, without any of the station buildings, it's a very different site to how the station was back when it was in use. There's a car park here, toilets, and even a small refreshment stand, so again, a possible place for starting your ride. As we leave the station and head under Darfield Lane, look out for the original London and North Western Railway boundary marker, which is placed just before we go under the bridge. Like Thorpe Cloud Station, Tissington Station closed to regular traffic in 1954, although was sporadically open all the way up until the railway was fully closed in 1963. The trail continues to climb as we leave Tissington, and I'm told there are some great views across the Peak District, but I wasn't so lucky with the mist this morning. Fortunately though, the mist did begin to lift as the ride went on. Six and a half miles up the Tissington Trail, we come to Allsop Enley Dale, which you might think sounds a little bit French, and you'd be right. The Enley part of the name comes from the Old French for in the, with the end, dale, coming from the Old English valley. So the name means Allsop, in the valley. And there was a station here, although all that remains here today is a car park, so again another place where you can possibly start this ride from. Not far from the station, we again cross paths with the A515, passing under it this time, under a bridge, which is almost long enough to make you think it possibly might be a tunnel. From Allsop, the trail continues to climb for another 2 miles before we get to the highest point of the ride. It crosses over a large embankment here, and this can be quite exposed if the weather is bad. Fortunately, although the weather is far from perfect today, it's not giving me any problems up here. And the mist even lifted a little bit to give me some great views across the hills. Before we get to that highest point of the ride, we pass by a limestone quarry at Lifts Road. Limestone made up a significant proportion of the goods traffic on this line, as it was plentiful in the area, and it's used in the production of pottery, which went on in Stoke-on-Trent, and steel, which was produced heavily in the West Midlands. This would have been an important spot on the railway, with sidings and trains being loaded, ready with their precious cargo to take to these manufacturing centres where it was needed. The high point of the ride happens as we head through this very deep cutting, which heads under this beautiful old bridge. We're now 341 metres above sea level, around 1,100 feet in old money, and we've climbed 215 metres since we left Ashbourne, or 705 feet. This grand bridge at the peak of the ride now serves as a farm track between two fields, but even though it doesn't have a grand use, it certainly still looks beautiful.
Thank you.
From here we have about a mile of gentle downhill remaining on the Tissington Trail. The Tissington Trail really is a fascinating ride, with beautiful views and a fantastic history. It's a wonderful place to ride your bike. But all good things must come to an end, although we do have some fantastic riding still ahead of us, as we leave the Tissington Trail and head towards Biggin. Here we're going to leave National Cycle Network Route 68, which is the Tissington Trail, and join National Cycle Network Route 548 that heads through Biggin Village. We do have to double back on ourselves a little bit here, But don't worry about getting lost, I'm going to leave the Garmin Connect and Komoot routes to this in the video description. If you're enjoying this video and want to say thank you for that route link, you can buy me a beer via the link in the video description. Or if you're not subscribed, please do make the effort and subscribe to the channel and like this video. It makes a massive difference and it will cost you nothing. From here we head through the gate and onto the road and make a right turn to head under the Tissington Trail and towards the village of Biggin. With this road being part of the National Cycle Network, it is very quiet, and we have about a mile of downhill through the village of Biggin itself before we're able to leave the road and again enjoy some traffic-free cycling on a bridleway. The left turn onto the bridleway does look a little bit like you're heading onto somebody's driveway, but there is a blue sign to tell us the National Cycle Network heads up this way. But it might also be a good idea to have this downloaded to some sort of navigation device, just so you're sure you're heading the right way. The bridleway starts with a short, sharp climb. The surface is a little bit sandy in places, so it can make it a little bit of a slog. However, we're far from mountain bike territory here, and with the 45mm tyres fitted on my gravel bike, I had no issues getting up here. There's a little sign along the way to let you know you are heading in the right direction on the National Cycle Network before we head down the other side. This is a fantastic descent, it was really good fun. If you are on gravel tyres on this skinnier side of things, you do need to exercise a little bit of caution because there are some big rocks and potholes along the way. But just look ahead and you'll be absolutely fine. A really enjoyable descent. This bridleway brings us back out onto the road near the village of Hartington. We're going to take a left turn here and head down this very quiet lane, but not for long, as we soon turn off National Cycle Network Route 548 and head on to Route 549, which will take us over to Hulme End. And to do this, we head up yet another bridleway. I have to admit, when I bought a gravel bike, this was the sort of trail that I sort of dreamed of riding. Out in the middle of nowhere, not another soul in sight, and a wonderful gravel surface. From Hartington to Hulme End, where we will join the Manifold Trail, the route takes quite a few twists and turns as we follow Route 459 of the National Cycle Network. It uses short sections of quiet road like this one, and quite a few sections again of bridleway, with this beautiful gravel surface and these lovely Derbyshire Dales stone walls on either side. This really is some cracking riding. We eventually end up on a fairly steep and narrow descent, which takes us down to the River Dove. You definitely again need to take some caution as you head down here on a gravel bike, and be aware that plenty of walkers do use this route, and with good reason, because at the bottom it brings us out at the River Dove and the beautiful Wolf's Coat Dale. This is where the River Dove heads into the limestone gorge that is Wolf's Coat Dale. You can walk down here and will eventually head into Dovedale, the most famous limestone gorge in the area. From here we cross the bridge over the River Dove and leave Derbyshire and head into the county of Staffordshire. So, if you're a fan of oatcakes, you just might be in luck. The route takes us away from the River Dove and through a few gates, so it's important to note that when we are going through these gates, just make sure that they do close behind you. The landscape appears to open up a little bit as we move away from the River Dove, and at Beresford Lane we head back onto the road. And again you'll see the little blue sign as we head back on the road, which points us in the right direction as we carry on along Route 549 of the National Cycle Network towards Hulme End. It's a fairly uneventful ride along very quiet lanes as we make our way to Hulme End. It's about 2 miles from where we've rejoined the road after crossing the River Dove till we get to Hulme End, where we're able to join onto the Manifold Trail and head south. The final stretch of road which takes us into Hulme End is a little bit busier than most of it, but it is a 30-mile-an-hour limit as we make our way through this picture postcard village. We take a left turn to head onto the Manifold Trail, which is well signposted. Here you'll find another large car park, so again another potential starting point for your ride, as well as a cafe and a visitors centre. The visitor centre, as you can probably tell, is housed in the old station here, as the Manifold Trail is another old railway line. This was one of the terminus stations on what was the Manifold Light Railway, and because it was a terminus station it had an engine shed, and that is now the cafe here at Hulme End. Inside the visitor centre, which is free to enter, there's a lot of really interesting information about the old railway here, which I'll try and share as we make our way down the Manifold Trail. There's also a lot of really interesting pictures of the railway when it was in use. Definitely worth having a stop here and having a look around. From here we have just over 8 miles of mostly traffic-free riding down the Manifold Way, which was previously the Leek and Manifold Valley Light Railway, which ran between Waterhouses and here at Hulme End. This was a narrow gauge railway that operated between 1904 and 1934. The line was not really put in for passenger traffic, as this is a very sparsely populated area, but it was there to carry milk and other farm products down to the main line at Waterhouses. The route from Hulme End follows the River Manifold south as it enters a limestone gorge. At Beeston Tor, it moves away from the River Manifold and follows the River Hamps as it makes its way along the valley and to Waterhouses. Apologies for the moisture on the lens here, but I was lucky enough to capture a couple of deer heading down the trail. Don't know if you can just about make out their white tails as they hop around the side of the trail and into the trees. The Manifold Way, as we know it today, was opened in 1937 by the Staffordshire County Council. They were handed over the trail after the railway closed in 1934, and tarmacked it over to make this a walking and cycling route. This is one of the first examples in the country of a disused rail line being changed for recreational use. After passing over a small road known as the Dale, we head past the site of the former Ecton Creamery and the small station that was here. There is some parking here on the left on Ecton Road, so again another potential start point for this ride. And at the car park you'll see some evidence of the old loading bays that were used to load the trains and unload the trains as they came back and forth from the creamery here. The creamery actually created the majority of the freight traffic on this line, so when it closed in 1932 it was a huge blow to the railway, and it only lasted another 2 years until 1934 when it was closed. Just under 2 miles from Hulme End, we come to Swainsley Tunnel. At the northern end of the tunnel was Butterton Station, of which nothing remains today for us to have a look at. The tunnel was built at the insistence of Thomas Wardle, who didn't want the view from nearby Swainsley Hall ruined by the railway running past. Today this tunnel forms part of a minor road, and it's the start of a 1.5 mile section of the Manifold Way that's shared with cars, bicycles and pedestrians. Inside you can see the tunnel is faced with brick, and there are some pedestrian refuges along the way, and in these refuges you can see the rough cut rock behind the brick facing. The tunnel is 150 metres long and it is lit throughout, so it's not essential that you do have lights when you pass through here, but if you do have some it might be advisable as it is a little bit dull in here, as you can see. The road is nice and smooth and ever so slightly downhill, so it's not long before we pop out at the southern side of the tunnel. The road carries on alongside the River Manifold and brings us to Wetton Mill, which can be accessed by heading left over a small bridge. I was hoping to make a lunch stop here at Wetton Mill, as there is a small cafe here. Unfortunately, with it being November, the cafe was closed today, so I had to carry on without my coffee. Wetton Mill Station lay on the other side of the river from the cafe, as can be seen on this picture from the Visitors Centre, taken in 1904. Not long after passing Wetton Mill, we head back onto a traffic-free section of the Manifold Way, and head over once again the Manifold River. As we head down this section, we start to see limestone cliffs rise above us, and in the distance a mythical cave appears in the hillside. The cave in question is Thor's Cave, and this can be accessed by a trail that heads off from the left of the Manifold Way. Now, it's not a bike-friendly trail, so you would have to leave your bike at the bottom if you fancy going to explore that trail. But there is an information board here at the bottom which tells us all about it. The cave has been formed over thousands of years of wind and water erosion on the limestone rock. The name possibly comes from the word Tor, which means hill, or, as many people think, it may be named after the Norse god of thunder, Thor, but no one is 100% on where the name actually came from. Moving on from Thor's cave, our route continues down a beautiful traffic-free, tarmacked path that carries on following the River Manifold. There is one more very short section of the Manifold Way that is shared with car traffic. It's about 200 metres long, and to be honest, it's more of a parking area than an actual road. We're quickly past it and back on a traffic-free section. And looking through the trees, we start to get views of Beeston Tor in front of us. Once we get to Beeston Tor, our route swings a hard right and starts to follow the River Hamps as opposed to the River Manifold for the rest of the route down to Waterhouses. There was a station here at Beeston Tor that was mainly used by tourists wanting to climb up the hill. This photo from the visitor centre shows a train passing by Beeston Tor. The River Hamps at this point is quite interesting because there's actually no water there, but there clearly is a riverbed here. Quite a strange sight to see the riverbed with no water in it. But apparently during the summer months or drier periods, the river actually disappears and flows underground and reappears further down the valley. The valley of the River Hamps start to open up as we head down towards Waterhouses. We lose the steep limestone cliffs, replaced by more gentle grassy slopes. After just over 8 miles of riding, we come to the end of the Manifold Way, and what was the Leek and Manifold Valley Light Railway. And we cross over the River Hamps one more time, and there is actually a little bit of water in it at this point. If you come here in the summer months, there is a cafe and a cycle hire over the other side of the river here. The Manifold Trail does continue a short while over the other side of the road, and it ends at the point where the main line railway used to exchange goods with the light railway. You can see the Manifold Railway, narrow gauge train on the left, and the main line train on the right. Passenger services on the main line closed in 1935, but it actually kept open for freight traffic all the way up until 1988, as it was used by local quarries. We're now going to take a left turn and head up the hill, but fortunately we don't have to cycle along this A road, as the path on the other side, as you can see marked by the blue signs, is a shared cycle path. The bad news is we've now got some climbing to do. From here it's about 2 miles to the peak of this climb, although there is the odd flat bit and downhill to break up the climb a little bit. We take a right turn and leave the main road and head up a quiet lane into the lovely Staffordshire countryside. I'm not going to lie to you, I found this climb really tough. There's some steep gradients, and like I said, it goes on for a couple of miles. But you do get rewarded with some fantastic views across the countryside. This viewpoint partway up the climb was quite interesting because you got a view of the Caldon quarries. And I found this interesting because earlier this year I rode the Caldon Canal from Stoke-on-Trent up to Leek, and it was that canal that was built partly to transport materials from these quarries down to the Trent and Mersey Canal so it could be taken to the industrial areas where it was used. At the end of this quiet lane we take a left turn and carry on our climb, although the gradient here is a little less steep. And if you are worried about directions, you can get the Komoot and Garmin Connect links for this ride in the video description. If you want to say thank you for those, or thank you because you're enjoying the video, there's a link in the video description to buy me a beer. And give the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. It's a massive help and it's completely free. After crossing over the busy A523, there is a bit of a respite from the climb and even a downhill section. But don't get lulled into a false sense of security, we've not reached the top yet. The peak of this climb comes just around the village of Caldon, and it's marked by some hay bales although I can't promise that they'll be there all year round. But what I can promise is the great views will be, as long as it's not misty. From here, the final 6 miles to Ashbourne are pretty much all downhill. Now on these loops that are put together, I always do my best to avoid any major roads, and where possible, we use traffic-free routes and quiet lanes. However, there wasn't a feasible alternative to using this very short stretch of the A523, so I hope you'll forgive me for using this 100-metre stretch of A road. If you really want to avoid it, you could walk down the grass voyage, and it brings us back into the Peak District National Park, which we left just after Waterhouses. As we carry on down this road, we get an absolutely stunning view of the entrance to the Dovedale Valley. And after admiring that view, it's time to head downhill back to Ashbourne. There's some quite steep descents here as we make our way back to Ashbourne, so do take a bit of caution. However, as I mentioned on my Leek loop video, having hydraulic disc brakes on this gravel bike really does give you confidence when you're heading down steep gradients like this. When things start to flatten out, we cross over the River Dove after it's emerged from the steep-sided limestone gorge that is Dovedale. The River Dove also marks the boundary between Staffordshire and Derbyshire, so we're now back into Derbyshire where we started, with just a few miles to go to Ashbourne. In the village of Mapleton, we pass by a fairly unique looking church. This is St Mary's Church, and it was built in the 18th century out of local limestone. Apparently the local nickname for the church is Little St Paul's because of the dome on top of the tower. We're on the home stretch as we pass over Bentley Brook. It's soon time to make the left turn back into Mapleton Lane car park where we started this ride. And that's it, we've completed this 32-mile loop around the Peak District with some stunning scenery and fantastic traffic-free riding. There's only one thing left to do now, and that is to ride through the Ashbourne Tunnel, as I can't resist a good railway tunnel. This tunnel is 350 metres long and was constructed along with the rest of the line in 1899. Freight traffic survived here until 1963 when the tunnel was abandoned. It wasn't originally part of the Tissington Trail, with Staffordshire County Council not taking ownership of it. It was eventually bought by Sustrans, who extended the Tissington Trail right into the centre of Ashbourne using the tunnel. The tunnel brings us out into a cutting, which heads under the main high street in Ashbourne. The trail then comes to an end at the Leisure Centre car park in the centre of Ashbourne. This is another possible starting point for this ride if you want to ride back and forth through the tunnel, which I'd recommend. It is quite good fun. The Leisure Centre car park is the previous site of the Ashbourne train station. I'm now going to head back through the tunnel and back to my car in Mapleton Lane car park. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please do subscribe if you have, and give the video a like. And if you want to say thank you for the routes in the video, again you can buy me a beer via the link in the video description. Thank you for watching, and happy cycling.